Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Roscoe's recap, and this viewing party was for All Stars 9 episode 11, and the guests this week were Thorgy Thor and Detox. Today we're going to be talking about Thorgy Thor telling a funny story about Ellie Diamond being a thief, Thorgy reveals who is the worst queen to work with, and Thorgy spills some unaired tea from her pit stop episode with Trixie Mattel, and why Roxxxy Andrews was annoyed at Trixie afterwards. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Also, I'm so close to hitting 110,000 subscribers, so if you're not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing because it really makes a big difference to my channel. Thank you! So, Naysha started off by mentioning the huge Microsoft outage that caused massive disruptions across the world that happened recently. And Naysha said as a result of this, Thorgy isn't able to come to Roscoe's because her flight was cancelled. But instead, they got Detox because she's local to Chicago. They then started watching this week's episode, and they watched the part where the crew and PAs got quick drag makeovers from the queens. Naysha said that the PAs on set are really cool and they support the queens so much. And when Naysha was on All Stars 8, when they did the Fame Game runways, the PAs would come and stand off stage to cheer for the queens when they were doing their runways. And this was because at that point, the queens had already been eliminated, but they wanted to, quote, hype them up, so the PAs cheered for them. Caramel then mentioned that speaking of makeovers, Detox has, quote, had the pleasure of doing 2 makeovers on Drag Race, one on Season 5 and one on All Stars 2. Detox laughed and said, quote, I don't know about the pleasure, and everyone laughed. Caramel then said that the second makeover with her sister was probably more the pleasure than the first one. Detox said the makeover on Season 5 was fun, but they had, quote, jam-packed so much bleep there that we didn't have much time to even do the makeover. Detox also said that she was running really behind with the makeup and all of the other things, but they also threw the curveball of having to do the flag routine dance as well, which Detox described as, quote, dumb. And she was just so exhausted by that point in the competition that she didn't know what she was doing, and that's clearly why she ended up in the bottom that episode. They then watched the part of this week's episode when RuPaul had a tic-tac lunch with the queens and they were all quite emotional. Naysha then said that this episode must have been, quote, exhausting for RuPaul, and everyone started laughing. Naysha added that RuPaul must have felt like it took so much out of her because she had to compliment all of the queens. Naysha then joked that Ru probably had to ask for a break between queens, and Detox joked that Ru probably didn't know the queens' names and said, quote, what's your name again? I effing love you. But Detox said it is genuinely emotional when you're on set with Ru, and Ru changes the queens' lives in so many ways, so when Ru says that she's proud of you, it's really rewarding. Detox also said, quote, even though she has an in-ear telling them who they are, and everyone laughed. Naysha then mentioned that Chanel was bawling her eyes out, and she did an impression of Ru just sitting there and staring blankly at Chanel. And Naysha said, quote, I can almost guarantee that she was probably the last one of the day, and Ru just couldn't take it anymore. Detox then mentioned that she didn't do a tic-tac lunch on her seasons, but she did do the podcast with Ru and Michelle on All Stars 2. Naysha said that Michelle makes you feel, quote, super comfortable, and for example, Ru never really interacts with the queens on social media, but Michelle always does, and if you see her in person, she always knows what the queens have been up to and talks to them, and Detox said, quote, now that's mother. Detox also said that years ago, when they did the shows like Battle of the Seasons and Work the World, Michelle was the host of a lot of those things, so they got to travel the world with Michelle and they got really close with her. Naysha then mentioned What You Packin', which is the YouTube show hosted by Michelle where she interviews the queens after they've been eliminated. And when Naysha did What You Packin', Michelle gave Naysha her phone number, and Naysha said that she was kind of surprised, but she felt like it was, quote, really genuine, and she said kudos to Michelle, and everyone cheered for Michelle. They then moved on and watched some more of this week's episode, and Naysha said she wanted to touch on something. And every time they talk about a particular queen doing a runway or she's on screen, people laugh, and that queen is Nina West. And when Naysha said Nina's name, some people in the audience laughed. Naysha said, quote, "See, you guys laughed, and that's the problem. Two things can be true. You can be a fierce drag queen, and you can be bad at Drag Race. Nina West is sickening. Nina West is a great person." Naysha went on to say that Nina, quote, "had a bad season, who cares, but you shouldn't define someone's drag just on the basis of a TV show, and Naysha is, quote, kind of getting sick of it, and people cheered." Naysha said that Nina deserves so much more than that, and they've talked before about her amazing charity work and that she's raised millions of dollars for charity, even from before she was on Drag Race. Detox agreed and said that Nina has always been community driven and it's, quote, awe-inspiring to see that she's been doing it for 20-something years. Naysha finished by saying that although they watch the show and they joke about stuff and talk crap, that's where it should stop. There was then a moment in the Roscoe's video where they muted the audio because there must have been some copyrighted music in the background. And Thorgy Thor came onto stage and everyone started screaming and cheering for Thorgy because they thought she wasn't going to be there. Once everyone had settled back down, Thorgy explained that she had no idea about the huge IT outage problems that were going on, so she was getting ready for her flight from New York to Chicago, and one of her friends told her that all flights were cancelled. But Thorgy still decided to go to the airport and she said she'd figure it out. She then said when she got to the airport, there were lots of angry people on their phones yelling things like, quote, "What do you want me to do? My flight is cancelled." And Thorgy said, quote, "This is good drama. Even if I don't make it to Roscoe's, this is still a good show." And everyone burst out laughing. Thorgy then said that she waited at the airport and her flight was about 4 hours delayed. So she called Sean, who's the manager of Roscoe's, and said that she wasn't sure if she was going to make it on time. But she did eventually catch her flight and she landed and got ready in 45 minutes. And everyone clapped for Thorgy. Thorgy then said she had another story she wanted to tell and everyone laughed again because Thorgy always has a very funny, chaotic energy. Thorgy brought up Ellie Diamond, who competed on Drag Race UK Season 2. Apparently, a long time ago, Ellie kept saying on Twitter that she wanted to date and sleep with Thorgy, but Thorgy doesn't go on Twitter much, so she never saw it. But eventually people kept telling Thorgy about it, so Thorgy messaged Ellie and said that they went back and forward for ages being, quote, cheeky with each other. And a while later, Ellie did a sale where she sold some of her drag outfits, and one of them was, quote, this piece of crap that Thorgy was wearing. And Thorgy said she decided to buy something from Ellie because they hadn't talked for a while, so she thought that she would buy something to, quote, get back in with her. The outfit was apparently, quote, exuberantly expensive, and the shipping was $4,000, but Thorgy still bought it and paid Ellie right away. 2 months then went by, and Thorgy still hadn't received the garment, and said, quote, where's my garment I bought, you thief? Thorgy then messaged Ellie and asked where the garment was, and Ellie said, quote, oh yeah, but didn't really respond. The next day, Ellie apparently posted a photo of her wearing the garment at a club. So Thorgy commented on the photo saying, quote, can I have my garbage garment please, B? Thorgy then said, quote, you just stole from me. Now I really want to date her. And everyone burst out laughing again. Thorgy continued and joked that Ellie is a, quote, pathological thief, you're amazing, let's go to Applebee's. And Thorgy stood up and showed off the outfit that Ellie made. I then saw on Twitter that someone had posted this clip of Roscoe's of Thorgy telling this funny story, and Thorgy commented on it saying, quote, love Ellie Diamond, and Ellie replied saying, quote, love you. And this reference to Thorgy saying love is a reference to her viral moment on the pit stop on All Stars 7 when Thorgy made a joke about the singer Pink and said she didn't like Pink and that Pink was a, quote, bad seed on this earth. But Thorgy joked and asked them to cut that part out of the pit stop, but they didn't. And then they cut the camera and Thorgy pretended that she never said that, and when Bob asked Thorgy again if she liked Pink, this time Thorgy said, quote, love Pink. And since then, this thing of love Pink has become a viral moment associated with Thorgy.
Do you want to say anything to Pink, personally?
I really just don't like her. She's a bad seed on this earth. You can cut that out, right? Please.
By Pink. What do you think of this song?
Love Pink.
And Trixie Mattel brought it up again on the pit stop for All Stars 9 when Thorgy was a guest, and Thorgy said people now always come up to her all the time and just say, quote, love Pink. In fact, earlier at Roscoe's, all of the hosts had said that they had deliberately worn pink for this week's viewing party in Thorgy's honour. Also, one other thing I saw on social media about this outfit that Ellie made for Thorgy is that the day after the Roscoe's episode came out, Ellie posted an Instagram story that said, Garbage Garment, the trilogy, and there was a photo of Ellie, Thorgy, and also Willem wearing the outfit. Anyway, back to Roscoe's, and Caramel said that speaking of Pink, there was a VIP member question which was, besides Pink, who else do you think is a bad seed on this earth? And everyone laughed. Thorgy then said, quote, well, we're watching Drag Race, so let's talk about who I hate from Drag Race. Thorgy then explained that wherever they go, in whatever city they're in for shows, the show promoters always ask the queens the same question, which is, which queens do you hate? Which Thorgy described as a very dark-sided question. So Thorgy said she always turns the question around and asks the promoters, quote, well, who was horrible when you had them here? Thorgy then asked the audience, quote, can anybody guess who every single gig said? Some people in the audience shouted out names such as Violet Chachki. Thorgy then said she loves meeting these people and she loves everyone, but then she said, quote, but Alyssa Edwards, but I don't want to mention any names, and everyone laughed. Detox said that it's always the fan favourites and then said, quote, if you only knew. Naysha said that Shangela is probably a close second, and a few people gasped, but Naysha clarified that it's because of timing. Detox agreed and said it's because of timing and being late, not because they're monsters. Naysha added that most of the time they tell the queens to be ready at 7, but the queens aren't actually ready until 9. Thorgy then said, quote, it's too much, it's being rude to everyone, we're all ready to go, the fans are screaming, let's go, and she walks in a towel. Thorgy joked that she kind of loves the nerve of a queen to walk in that late and not give a damn, but she also said, quote, but get ready. Naysha then told a story of a time they were in England for a show, and both Shangela and Alyssa were there. And the meet and greet happened before the show at 8 o'clock. And so Naysha lied and told Shangela that she needed to be ready at 6:30. So Shangela came in at 8 o'clock and was ready on time. And Naysha turned to the show promoter and said, quote, you're welcome. And we have heard from queens before that Alyssa can be tricky to work with. For example, Trixie and Katia were once on Hey Queen and they were talking about Alyssa Edwards. And Katia said that she was, quote, a diva. And both Trixie and Katia said that they had, quote, very strong opinions about Alyssa. Trixie then told a story about a tour that they were on and said that some queens have a talent of being on time, but Alyssa is not one of them. And, quote, Alyssa Edwards, always and forever, but only sometimes. Trixie also said that watching Alyssa's secret on TV is fun, but living Alyssa's secret on a tour bus is something else. Apparently, during this tour, Alyssa was late for the meet and greet, and Mimi First was the director of the tour, and Mimi confronted Alyssa and said that if she can't be on time, she's fired. Trixie then said that there was a, quote, big fight and security were called, and Milk crouched between Mimi and Alyssa and had to push them apart. Alyssa then apparently turned to them and yelled, quote, "I don't want to be on this B-cast tour anyway." Trixie also said, quote, "Newsflash, currently at this moment we're not feeling that energy either." But they all forgave each other and Alyssa was back on tour 2 days later. And years later on Trixie and Katya's YouTube show, Trixie once said that she had some beef with Alyssa and they had once talked about it in an interview. And Alyssa must have seen this interview and called Trixie directly and they squashed the beef on the phone and Trixie really appreciated Alyssa's direct way of dealing with the drama. And it's since been assumed that this Hey Queen interview with Trixie was probably what Alyssa was referring to, and this may have been responsible for Trixie and Alyssa reconciling. Anyway, back to Roscoe's, and they moved on to the Q&A, and Thorgy had spoken earlier about how she was a trailblazer in classical music in drag because she played in the London Philharmonics, and she was probably one of the first drag queens to do that. This then led Thorgy to talk about other ways in which she's a trailblazer, and Thorgy said she was a trailblazer when it comes to forming alliances on Drag Race. Apparently, when Thorgy was on All Stars 3, right away she went to every single person and asked them if they wanted to be in an alliance, but she always made sure it was on camera. And people just kept saying things like, quote, "Oh, I don't know." Thorgy said she tried to form an alliance with literally every single queen on the cast, but they all said no, and she later found out that all of the queens were already in alliances. But Thorgy thinks that she's the one who started the alliance thing on Drag Race. Also, they had previously talked about if they had to go back to All Stars, who from their original seasons would they want to be in teams with? Thorgy said for her it would be Chi-Chi DeVayne, who sadly passed away in 2020. Thorgy said she misses Chi-Chi so much and thinks about her every day. Thorgy also said she's not sure she's ever talked about this before, but after their season, she and Chi-Chi got really close, and Thorgy had lived her whole life in New York and Chi-Chi was from Louisiana. But Chi-Chi said she really loved San Francisco and she seriously considered moving there. And Thorgy had said that she would go and live with her too and they were seriously considering being roommates together. But then Chi-Chi unfortunately started getting sick. But Thorgy told everyone to give it up for Chi-Chi and everyone clapped and cheered for Chi-Chi. And finally, Thorgy brought up the love pink thing again, and she mentioned the pit stop that she recently did with Trixie Mattel, because Trixie kept bringing it up during the pit stop. Thorgy said that Trixie was being, quote, really mean about Roxxxy's look, and throughout the episode, Thorgy was trying to defend Roxxxy, and what we saw in the episode of Trixie reading Roxxxy's outfit was only about 10% of what Trixie actually said. According to Thorgy, Trixie kept going on, quote, rants and rants about Roxxxy's green outfit, and said, quote, what is she? Camouflage? Was she hiding in the woods? But Thorgy said that Trixie just went on about how bad Roxxxy's look was, and a lot of it was edited out. And some of the jokes were funny, but Thorgy felt like, quote, girl, relax at a certain point. And Thorgy then said that Roxxxy called Thorgy the day after the pit stop episode came out and said, quote, thank you for always being a great sister. What the F did I do to Trixie? And I did talk about this in a previous video because Roxxxy tweeted and called Trixie out after the pit stop episode aired, so make sure you go and check out that video for more details and I'll put a link in the description. So there you go, there was the Roscoe's recap for All Stars 9 episode 11. Are you looking forward to next week's finale? And who do you think will make it to the top 2? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos as well as have your comments featured in my Have Your Say videos, please check out my Patreon and consider supporting me. It goes such a long way to helping support my channel and I really appreciate it. And I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreon members who are amazing and support me every month. Thank you so much for being part of my Patreon. I really appreciate it and I really do love my Patreon community. You are all legends. If you liked this video, please remember to like and comment on the video to help tell the algorithm that this is a great video, and make sure you hit the subscribe button because it really does make such a big difference to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!